America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Africa, tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze.
You are listening to African Father in America podcast by Simon Javan Okello, live from Seattle, Washington, USA.
Thank you so much for joining us for the Daily African Proverbs. My name is Simon Javan Okello, and I am so excited to be here with you. It's a beautiful Thursday morning here in Seattle, Washington. It's exactly 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and I am truly privileged to be hosting the incredible Gogo Rutendo Ngara, who is our special guest every Thursday. Gogo Rutendo Ngara is in South Africa, and I said I'm in Seattle, Washington. And Gogo Rutendo Ngara is, a well-known spiritual leader and intellectual, and just an incredible leader that I hope you can all, meet her virtually today, but also connect with her in the future. If you look at our past episodes over the last 2 or so months, you'll find some of our previous conversations with her. So today we are going to share a proverb from Angola. We are taking a virtual journey to Angola, and the proverb that we are going to discuss, I'm going to pin it actually at the top of the room so that those who are just joining us can learn a little bit more about it. So just bear with me for 1 second. And I see Said is here. I see Austin is also here. Welcome. I would love for you all to join us on stage. For the first 30 minutes, we will just be listening to this conversation with Gogo Rutendo Ngara. And then during the last 30 minutes of our conversation today, we will be able to engage with you all and give you a chance to also share your interpretation of today's proverb, which says that it is the voyage, not the ship, that matters. Now, I would love to invite you to join us on YouTube as well. Through the link at the top of the room, you can join us for the YouTube live stream. Remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and also remember to share the link to the YouTube channel with members of your community who can join us. And also, while you're on Clubhouse, please remember to ping in people into the room. Now I want to invite you, Gogo Rutendo Ngara, just quickly share with us what this proverb means to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Simon, and good morning to you. Here it is late afternoon in South Africa. So greetings in a new season that we find ourselves in. It's been a couple of weeks since we last met. And I think in that time, many of us have taken voyages, different voyages, if not only the voyage through the festive season and into a new Gregorian calendar year of 2022. And the proverb that you've said today is that it is the voyage and not the ship that matters. So I'd like to just come to our home continent here, Africa, and just say that something about Africa is that it is home to an incredible system of rivers, and these rivers have an intricate network of tributaries, connecting streams, lakes, springs, pools, deltas, waterfalls, and then oceans. And this continent boasts the longest river in the world, which is the Nile River. And the Nile travels more than 6,650 kilometers from the Great Lakes region, as you will know, from the equator all the way into 9 countries before it drains into the Mediterranean Sea through Kemet or Egypt. But Africa also boasts the deepest and the most powerful river in the world, which is the Congo River. And, this reaches depths of more than 220 meters, and it discharges more than 50,000 cubic meters of water per second. But Africa is always also home to the river with the most unusual route in the world, and that's the Niger River. And the Niger River travels an obscure boomerang course that for many centuries baffled geographers because they could not understand why this river moves in such an anomalous way. And also, this particular continent boasts the river with the biggest and the largest single curtain of water, the greatest waterfall in the world, in the planet, which is that of Musiwatunyo or Victoria Falls, which is one of the seven wonders of the world. What's this got to do with the proverb? And why am I talking about rivers? And that's because here in Africa, and even across the world, indigenous elders will tell us that everything is a teacher, knowledge lies everywhere, and in all things lies wisdom. And that the greatest source of this wisdom is nature. So when we want to understand, and unpack anything, my preference is to go to nature to try and help them unpack, what it is that we're looking at today. So why rivers? I think for me, rivers are one element of nature that can illustrate the principle of voyage. A voyage is a river. Rivers are perpetual travelers. They're forever on the move. They're forever in motion. They're forever on voyage. And as they voyage from one source to wherever they end, if they end at all, they carry so many other elements of nature upon them, which are also on voyage. They carry water, or they are water, the water is the voyage, but they may also carry fish or other water animals. They may carry soil like the fertile black soil that the Nile historically brought from the highlands into the desert. But they can also carry debris. They can carry things or beings that once lived but live no more. They could carry vessels, floating vessels such as yachts or boats. So rivers are an incredible example of what we mean when we speak about voyage. And eventually the river empties into the sea, which brings us to the definition of a voyage. And the dictionary tends to differentiate between a journey and a voyage. And a voyage, according to the dictionary definition, is a long journey, which normally involves travel by sea or in space. And so this travel by sea would be in a ship. The travel through the air would be in an airship or an aeroplane, and the travel in space would be in a spaceship. And a voyage always has some kind of source, a beginning, and then it has a potential end, but that potential end is also a potential for something else, which is a new voyage or a new journey. And so voyages are interesting because our lives are consistently in voyage. We're forever in a source, and we're forever with the potential of an end, and we're forever in an end that has the potential for a new source. So, what is then the carriage or the carrier of a river? And what is it that makes the river and the voyage one? And so this is where we can then bring in a ship. Why does this proverb speak about ships? A ship may facilitate a voyage, but it is not the voyage. There's no doubt that ships were incredible feats of technology that enabled humans to traverse long distances upon the oceans, braving gale winds, braving the tides, braving the creatures of the sea. I mean, ships were a transformation from simple floating vessels such as yachts and boats that was subject to the forces of nature to powered vessels that allowed navigation in spite of the forces of nature. So these are incredible feats of technology. But we need to come right back to the African continent if we want to understand where these floating vessels or these powered vessels began. And the earliest historical evidence of boats is actually found right here, going along the Nile, in, of course, our beloved land of ancient Kemet. And it was these that were used to carry obelisks, from Upper Egypt or Upper Kemet in the south, all the way into Lower Kemet, in the north, in the Nile Delta. They usually had sails and oars, and because they were on the Nile, they depended on the winds in the narrow canal channel, in order to propel them. But they also needed to be rowed. But when we're speaking vessels that are able to navigate the seas or to navigate, water, we're talking here in Africa. And, and these were there from as early as 4000 BC. And it is only a couple of thousand years later that we start seeing, floating vessels, in the Phoenicians, or in 1000 BC, AD, not even BC, that we start seeing the Vikings building long boats that they used, to navigate the seas. And then about 1100 AD, the Chinese, started using junks, which have a rudder, that helps to steer, in addition to watertight compartments and battens, that helps to make them stronger. And, they were used both for transport and for fighting ships. And they were in use long before ships of the West included such features. But by the 15th century, then we start seeing the precursors of modern ships that began to sell sail, allowing greater access to the oceans. And, the current ships are no longer made of wood, but, they're made of composite materials like steel. They have a navigation bridge, a hull, and an engine room. They have all sorts of invisible parts like bulkheads and frames and cargo holds and hopper tanks and, girders and, all sorts of things. And some of them have very interestingly cosmological names. Like, for instance, if you're standing facing the bow, which is the front part of a ship, and on the the left-hand side of the ship is called the port, and the right-hand side is called the starboard. So there's something cosmological about the ship as an agent for transporting, through different mediums into a different state. So ships almost as a feature of transformation. But the ship does not define the journey. The ship may hit an iceberg like the Titanic. The anchor may break, it may lose its rudder, or the mast may be torn in a gale force, or the navigation bridge may become infiltrated. So the ship is not the journey. It's a vessel that may facilitate the journey, but unlike the river, which is the journey, it is not the journey. But let's continue with this issue of ships. If we go back to the 15th or the 16th or the 17th century, we start seeing great voyages taking sail, particularly from Europe. And many of these were voyages of discovery. And what we know is that, on the 3rd of August, 1492, the Italian explorer Christopher Columbus started his voyage across the Atlantic Ocean. And, he had a crew of about 90 men and 3 ships. And eventually he discovered the Americas. And I say that in quotation marks because there were those that were there anyway. And by the time we get to the Age of Enlightenment in the 17th century Europe, these journeys resulted in the very first slave ship, which landed on the 20th of August, 1619, with about 20 Angolans, since this is an Angolan proverb, who had been kidnapped by the Portuguese and arrived in the British colony of Virginia, who were brought there by English colonialists. So these were historically the first enslaved Africans in the New World, which then led to centuries of slavery in Northern America. So ships which are not the voyage have also been the facilitators of slavery, and they've been facilitators that carried colonialism. There have been facilitators that carried exile, that carried disruption, that carried dislocation, and so much of what Africa struggles to overcome today. So, according to the proverb, it is not the voyage. It is the voyage, rather, and not the ship that matters. And it's important to make this distinction. Now, I've said for me, a voyage is epitomized by a river. And I mentioned 4 rivers at the beginning, and there's one that I really love, which is that is of the Niger River. And the Niger, like any voyage, the Niger has a source, and the Niger, begins in the Guinea Highlands, just about 240 kilometers from the Atlantic Ocean. And according to science, it should take the shortest route to the sea where it empties out, which is the normal logic of what rivers would do, going downstream, from highland to lowland. But the Niger River does something else. It moves in a northeasterly direction deep into the interior of the Sahara Desert in Mali. And once it is in the desert, instead of flowing towards the Mediterranean Sea, which would be its natural course that we'd expect it to do, it makes a surprising right turn near the city of Timbuktu, and it follows a meandering journey through Niger, through Benin, through Nigeria, until finally it discharges into the Atlantic Ocean at the Gulf of Guinea. So what if we'd followed the logic, the understood logic of rivers? What would have been a true 240-kilometer journey from the Guinea Highlands straight into the Atlantic Ocean now becomes more than 4,180 kilometers of river. So, and because of this inefficient route, it's inefficient. Why move 4,000 kilometers instead of 240 kilometers? And because of this, it loses a lot of its efficiency. It loses 2/3 of its potential flow. And because it loses 2/3 of its potential flow, it causes seepage and evaporation, you know. And eventually, when the gradient decreases, it further reduces its flow potential. And it then has a very slow and sluggish journey towards ocean. But efficiency, this loss of potential, this sluggishness, this seepage causes the Niger Delta. And the Niger Delta is a series of braided streams of marshes and lakes that are as large as Belgium. The Niger Delta is the largest wetland in Africa, and it is the third largest in the world. It has an ecosystem containing one of the highest concentrations of biodiversity on the planet. It supports abundant rainforests, flora, and fauna, and it has large stretches of arable land that contain diverse agricultural systems. The Niger Delta is home to more than 30 million people who make use of this water, made up of more than 40 different ethnic tribes. So this delta, the Niger Delta, the result of an inefficient river, is actually effective. It is effective in creating a wellspring of diversity and nourishment. But unfortunately and tragically, this diversity could soon be destroyed because of extensive dam construction and poisoning of the rivers due to oil spills, and unfortunately, the Niger Delta is slowly becoming uninhabitable by flora, fauna, and humans. And then, of course, there's the ongoing conflict associated with the competition for oil and associated wealth. And what is a thriving ecology and ecosystem is gradually giving in to the atrocity of ecocide. So when we look at this voyage of this river, it tells us many things because nature is a teacher. It teaches us all everything. What this river is telling us is telling us about the journey of indigenous knowledge of Africa or African spirituality. It is telling us about the journey of our traditional knowledges. And it is telling us about the journey of how they come about to us in terms of our philosophy, our science, our technology, our astronomy, our education, our mathematics, our engineering, you name it, which is grounded in cultural heritage of a particular African nation or society, and which has been maintained by communities over centuries, And common features of our indigenous knowledges is that it has roots in community, and this community is then situated within a greater and broader social context, and there's an interaction in indigenous knowledge and wisdom between different levels. So there's an interaction between social and spiritual relations. It is mostly tacit, this indigenous wisdom, so it is, a lot of it has been passed on traditionally orally or via initiation or via demonstration or observation. It is not necessarily cognitive knowledge. And it is very experiential rather than being theoretical. And what is really fundamental, going back to nature, is that indigenous knowledge is interlinked to the understanding of the environment. And because of this, it is constantly dynamic and it is constantly adapting. And so when we look at what indigenous knowledge is, or ancient wisdom, according to the African spirituality, we realize that it actually is the attributes of a river. So like indigenous knowledge, rivers chart history. They thus chart the direction of knowledge. They are meandering. They move around nooks and crannies. They traverse nuances. They examine all the contours. They collect, they deposit, they nourish, they nurture, they feed, they cleanse in order to acquire the full body of knowledge. And apart from the limits of the banks, which give them shape and form, they go beyond boundaries. They move with gravity. Sometimes they venture against it, and they come in multiple forms and traverse many mediums. They are not limited by disciplines, but are limited only by the great expanse of life and death. And they do not take the shortest route all the time. They take the most accommodating route, which is sometimes inefficient, but incredibly effective. And like indigenous knowledge, rivers take everything into consideration, and that's everything with them on the journey or the voyage. So rivers are the oracle, they are the diviner, they are the seer, they're the reflective flowing aspect of neter, which is what we mean when we're speaking about nature. And from rivers, we learn that indigenous knowledge, the knower, and the praxis are one. And so this is why we then are like rivers. And what for me the proverb says, that the proverb is saying that in as much as the journey, or as the river is the voyage, we are the voyage, and we should not depend on external ships, which may facilitate a voyage, but which may also facilitate a voyage of destruction, which is what we have seen with how the slave ships and the colonial ships have shaped the Africa that we have today. So that would be my interpretation of the proverb.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gogo Rutendo Ngara. I just deeply appreciate your depth of wisdom. And I want to welcome everybody who has joined us on Clubhouse and also on YouTube. We are live streaming this conversation every single day, 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We have the daily African proverbs. Every Thursday, we are truly privileged to host Gogo Rutendo Ngara as our special guest. And Thursday is when we go deep. We go as far as, you've been hearing, if you've been paying attention. And so if you are on Clubhouse, I invite you to ping in people into the room. And I also invite you to follow the African Father in America Club. If you're watching on YouTube, I invite you to, subscribe to the channel. Share this video if you feel that this information is important for our community. And also comment with your thoughts on today's proverb. Let me know what it means to you. And I want to continue on with the conversation here with Gogo Rutendo Ngara. And in a moment, we are going to invite comments and also a few interpretations from all of you who are on stage with us today. Right now, I want Gogo Rutendo Ngara to share with us a little bit about, when you think about the beginning of the year, like right now, African spirituality probably has something that we can learn. For example, the river is also the beginning of, for me, based on what you are describing, the beginning of life. For example, the ecosystem of, let's say, let's say Kenya, where the wildlife depends on the River Mara to feed all the wildlife in the Masai Mara, in the Serengeti in Tanzania. I wanted you to speak about what African spirituality says about the beginning, especially like right now, where everybody who is listening is probably thinking about, what am I going to do with myself this year? And then after that, share with us what Credo Mutua, who is, an author, activist, prophet, polymath that I learned through you, and also the wonderful Jane I do. I want you to share with us what Credo Mutua would say about the beginning, like, the start of a new year. What would he advise, African children who are listening to do at the beginning of a new season like now?
Thank you so much for that, Simon. Before I go into that, I just want to make a point which I think is really relevant, which is, this proverb that you have set as a challenge today is a proverb from Angola. And as we said earlier, the first slave ship came from Angola. And what this first slave ship that landed in the west across the Atlantic, happened to come from Angola. And but what we also know is that around that time in the late 16th and early 17th century, many of the states in the Central African coast had found their economic power and their territorial control threatened by the very same Portuguese, who attempted to establish a colony at Luanda, which is now present-day Angola. And many of these became regional powers through their trade in African slaves. And this growing demand for this human labor in the new world colonies, such as Brazil, ultimately led to Portugal seeking military and economic control of the region. And old trading partners came under military attack by Portuguese soldiers and indigenous African raiders in search of captives for the slave trade. And the rulers were forced to adapt to these new circumstances to face certain destruction. But it so happened that one leader who was very, very adept at overcoming these difficulties happened to be a woman. And this woman was Queen of Ndongo, or Ananzinga. Now, why is this important? And the role that Nzinga, Queen Nzinga played in terms of re-establishing, African control over the region that had been taken over through the slave trade, is that she was a woman. And so what is it that we need to learn about feminine power in African spirituality? So let's go back to now Kemetic, to Kemet. And when we look at Kemetic spirituality, is governed by many cycles, and all indigenous knowledge is governed by the nature cycles. And it just so happens that when we follow the lunar cycle, from new moon to the next new moon, each of those moon cycles, according to African spirituality, has a particular principle, archetype, or deity that governs it. And it so happens that the new moon that just came in on the 2nd of January, this new moon is governed in Kemetic spirituality by the principle of Oset. Now, Oset is known by many names. She's known as Yemanya. She's known as Nom Kubulwane. Oset is the mother, the quintessential mother goddess, the quintessential mother principle. And the most important thing about Oset as it relates to our proverb today is that Oset governs the oceans. She governs the seas. And so when the oceans were being used as a source of conquest, through the ships that sailed through them and created the colonialism and the slavery and then deep-seated here in South Africa into apartheid, they were pushing through the feminine goddess of Oset, the feminine, the one who births all. And so when we start seeing how patriarchy has, really created, the discrimination and the wounding of the feminine, we can see its continuity in how ships, which are not the voyage, have created a disruption in the system. So that was just in reference to how does Angola fit into the actual proverb. Now, to your question of New Year. So the New Year that we are celebrating at the moment is of course, the New Year that is governed by the Gregorian calendar. And here in Africa, as in different parts of the world, there are many different New Years. And many of these New Years are governed by the cycles of nature themselves and the seasons in terms of when you seed, when you plant, when you water, when there's growth, and when you harvest. And so when we look at the African New Year, that is usually at the time of spring, which for us here in the southern hemisphere, would come in around August, September. So the African New Year would have actually started around August, September, as opposed to now in the Gregorian time. So here, certainly in the South, the New Year as we have it now is out of sync with the cycles of nature. But what's really important is that the new year just happens to happen around one important cycle of nature, which is the solstice. And here in the south, we just went through the summer solstice, and obviously in the north, you have just gone through the winter solstice. And the winter solstice and the summer solstice are really, really critical times, in terms of how firstly, what's happening on a planetary level and what's happening on a cosmic level, but also how we are able to become in sync with the greater cycles of life. And so African spirituality, when it speaks about new times, new seasons, new beginnings, always asks us to go right back into the time of the conception, which is the time of conception, or the time when the planet is going through its own planetary conception. So it's about aligning ourselves to the higher principles of nature. And when we speak about the beginnings, once again, when we come into African cosmology, then we start seeing that the beginning is feminine. It's intrinsically feminine, So when we're speaking about the source, in Kemetic cosmology, they'll talk about Nut or Nun, which is the primordial waters from which all things come. From which all things come, from these primordial waters, which are inherently feminine, in nature. And when we come here in the south, we're told of the great goddess Ma, who was responsible for creation as it happened. So I'd say, what does African spirituality tell us about the cycles and new beginnings? It's how do we go back to that which is intrinsically feminine? And I'm not saying female, I'm saying feminine. In Chinese cosmology, they'll talk about yin. What is it that is intrinsically yin? And the yin, or the feminine qualities, are receptive. It is receptive, it is cool, it is moist, it is still, it is, it moves inwards as opposed to outwards, it is restful, it governs the night, it sees, it conceives, and that's the state we should be in when we're entering into a new cycle. We should be getting into that yin state, into that feminine state that allows us to see the potential in order to create and manifest a future, or a greater future. And what we seed at these times, like the times of the solstice, is what we will see manifesting in the next cycle. And what we seed, it's what we're seeding in terms of our thought patterns, what we're seeding in terms of our emotions, what we're seeding in terms of our actions, what we're seeding in terms of our relationships with ourselves, our relationships with our families, our relationships with community, our relationships with the environment, our relationship with the cosmos. It is very important at a time like this to get and to be very clear of what it is that we're seeding, because whatever we seed, when we look back and we say, wow, everything is a mess, what did we seed at the time when we were in our optimum feminine state? So that's what African spirituality would say about these times of the beginnings, and just like a voyage, which a voyage may seem to reach an end, but that end is just the beginning of a new potential, which is the potential for being a new beginning. That is what these cycles are. And we should really move in harmony with those cycles. I know you had wanted me to say something about Credo Mutwa
I
in
did, I
this.
did, I did. I just want to welcome. We have quite a few, friends and members of our village who have joined us on Clubhouse and also on YouTube. I just want to truly, truly thank you. If you haven't joined us on YouTube and you are in the Clubhouse room, the best way to do that is through the link at the top of the room. And also, if you're on Clubhouse, I just spent the last 2 minutes pinging people into the room so that we can really gain some wisdom and knowledge from the incredible Gogo Rutendo Ngara, who is here with us today. This is a privilege. So I urge you to ping in, 3 to 5 people to join us. And also, if you're watching, share this the link to this live stream with members of your community who you think should be here right now. Now, I'll pass it to you, Gogo Rutendo, so that you can share with us what Credo Mutwa would say about the beginning of a new season like right now.
So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to read one of my favorite parts of Indaba My Children, which is the beginning, actually, of the book, and it's the beginning of the sacred story of the Tree of Life, which he calls the self-created. No stars were there, no sun, neither moon nor earth. Nothing existed but darkness itself, a darkness everywhere. Nothing existed but nothingness, and nothingness neither hot nor cold, dead nor alive, and nothingness far worse than nothing, and frightening in its utter nothingness. How long nothing lasted, no one will ever know. And why there was nothing, nothing is something we must never try to learn. Nothingness had been floating for no one knows how long upon the invisible waters of time, that mighty river with neither source nor mouth, which was, which is, and ever shall be. Then one day, or is it right to say one day, the river time desired nothingness, like a flesh and blood male beast desires his female partner. And as a result of the strangest mating of time and nothingness, a most tiny, nigh invisible spark of living fire was born. This tiny, so tiny spark of fire could think, and it grew conscious of its lonely state. No one nor nothing could hear its cries in the lonely depths of utter nothingness, like a fallen babe lost and in despair in a cold, dark forest. I exist. I am what I am was the living thought that pulsed through the mind of the tiny spark as it wildly flew through the dark, trying to flee from where there was no escape, trying to evade the lifeless, empty, dark, and utter nothingness. It was like a tiny firefly lost in a dark cave beneath a berg from where there could be no escape. I must either grow or end my life, thought the spark, at long, long last. If nothingness wishes to engulf me in my present size and state, then I must increase my size till I equal that of nothingness. There was nothing for the spark to feed upon and grow, so it fed upon itself. And it grew in size until at last its mother nothingness became aware of its unwelcome presence and decided to destroy it. Nothingness at first had tried to smother it in darkness, which is the enemy of light, but the spark resisted brighter and became yet brighter. Then nothingness cast a spell of cold upon the spark, cold, a deadly foe of heat. But this induced the spark to grow, only hotter and yet more hot. The living spark did grow and grew until at last it equaled nothingness in size. And to sustain itself, to proceed with growth, it devoured its mother nothingness. It digested her with the most awful flash of light that anyone or anything had ever chanced to see. I am what I am, it boasted. But River Time was very cross with what the spark had done, and quickly sent the spirit cold to fight the spark outright. A mighty battle soon ensued in which the spark, now a universal roaring flame which filled the sky with many soaring tongues, tried to melt cold spirit and devour it complete. While cold its icy spirit blew its cold wet breath into the flame, and it only turned a portion of the flame into cold white ash. And this ferocious battle, which started so long ago, today still rages unabating and shall yet proceed till time shall cease to flow. And the wise men of the tribes relate that if the flame one day shall win, all that exists shall perish in one consuming fire. While if victory goes to the spirit of cold, all living things shall freeze to death. May the great spirit, who is Lord Almighty and paramount chief of all, grant that neither flame nor cold shall ever win the war, because whoever beats the other, the sun, the moon, the earth, and stars, and all that live shall cease to be. May both antagonists fight forth for everlasting time, because on all their unceasing conflict, all life depends. And from the still warm ashes, wounds in the flame's existence, inflicted in battle by the spirit of cold, there arose the great Mother Ma, the very first goddess of human shape, the all-knowing, omniscient, most merciful goddess Ma, had created herself by the Great Spirit's wish, who, displeased with the wasteful and senseless war between the flame and the cold, had come from far beyond the 10 gates of eternity to bring order to the universe. So that's just an excerpt from Credo Mutwa's Indaba My Children. And it sounds like a mythical tale, but actually what this mythical tale is telling us, it's all about the forces of creation and how creation took place, the science of creation, from the nothingness, the void, into the manifestation, which when they speak about the great spark, lends itself into what we know in the West as the Big Bang. But we see that Credo Mutwa also speaks about the femininity that I spoke about earlier, and how the one who comes to restore, the great battle between hot and cold, between the flame and cold, the one who comes from far beyond the 10 gates of eternity to bring order to the universe is the great Mother Ma. So that's what Kredomoto would say. He'd say, go back to the beginning and go back to the great mother, Ma, because in that we know how to seed the future and to seed the year that is here to come.
Wow. There's nothing I have received in the last year that is as big as connecting with you. And sometimes I ask myself when I'm alone that how did you learn all these things? The excerpt you read for us is one thing, but everything you've been saying is just so enriching and so I can't describe it. So thank you for just for being who you are, and for enlightening me and our community members who are listening and watching to our conversation. We want to hear from some of them. I want to invite those of us who are on Clubhouse to just quickly share your comments. If you have an interpretation, share it briefly. Let's have about a minute, at the most 2 minutes, so that we can then have an opportunity for Gogo Rutendo Ngara to take us through a grounding and then closing comments from her once she hears, just how you all feel, especially those of us who are on stage on Clubhouse. If you're just joining us, hand raising went off at the 30-minute hour, and that's how we do it here in the Daily African Proverbs. And with that, I want to invite Shads, if you'd like to share a comment to Gogo Rutendo Ngara, or if you want to share your interpretation just briefly, then we go to Said and continue on. Thank you so much. And it seems Shad says that she's just here to listen today. So I suspect that she's not going to be speaking. So we'll quickly go to Said. Share your brief interpretation, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. This is great, and it's great to learn. I've been really listening carefully and learn about all these wonders of African nature and water and that all the African spirituality. It's really amazing. It's a great day of really learning. If anything, really, I really wanted to listen to people, but as somebody who travels a lot. And looking at this proverb as it's the voyage, not the ship that matters, I think it just shows how much it's where you go, what's very important, and the mood and importance of what you're putting on where you're going than the what you're using. And I think in real life, when we live every day, most of the time we worry so much about, the circumstances, uh, uh, the circumstances in which we live in every day. Most especially if you live in some type of struggle or anything. Um, and you forget that it's a journey that you're going through, and whatever happening now, it's like the ship for me, which is like doesn't really matter for now, because where you're heading is where exactly you want to be. So focus on the voyage, focus on what's happening, than the tribulation and struggle that is happening right now. It's also a lesson for me from this proverb today. Thank you so much. This is Cedric, and I'm so excited to be here to learn and grow. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you
Back
so
to you.
much. You're most welcome, my brother said. I'm grateful. Austin, briefly share with us your comments or your interpretation.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. This is really inspiring to me. I want to be brief because to me, first thing I think about is how this proverb inspires me to think of a physical and spiritual journey. I think, I'm a visual person, so, I think of this and I think of this, I think of my ancestors in the continent of Africa, how a group of men deprived my ancestors of their freedom, ripped them from their villages and homes, transported them as captives on a ship from the continent of Africa, took them on a voyage to North, Central, and South America, and throughout the Caribbean. The captors of my ancestors, they intended the voyage on that ship to be a one-way destination, a journey with no return. But like I was listening to Gogo mention, often a voyage that's intended to be an ending is really, in reality, an opportunity for a new beginning. Like she said, a seed to what's yet to come. And in my case, personally, I think that my ancestors were in the bottom of the belly of a wooden ship. My ancestors endured a voyage that became my beginning. They boarded the ship involuntarily as captives. They had a rudder that steered that ship thousands of miles from their home. And yet, look at this. Here I am, 2020. I'm Monica. I'm here listening to you, Simon, and my sister Gogo, and other brothers and sisters from my homeland, and learning and discovering more about my history. And here I am planning to return back to Africa where the journey started. So for me, it's a cycle of, it's a really interesting cycle of life, of discovery and reconnection, because the ship was intended to be a one-way destination from Africa, but yet it became my beginning. So thank you.
Oh, you're most welcome, Austin. This is Simon speaking. Thank you for everything you just shared with us. Kesiwa, share with us your comments, please.
I definitely appreciate this room today. As far as the proverb is concerned, it is the voyage, not the ship, that matters, and I feel like it is quite true in everything that uh, Gogo Rotunda Ngara has shared. It's just very evident how the continent of Africa is just full of so many possible journeys, and I really like the contrast, with how I felt as though I was going through each of those voyages as she was sharing it, and I can't wait, like Austin, to see for myself, like just experience it. And then also I realize it's a metaphor for life. Each of us have dreams. We have goals that we're trying to set. And truly, the only difference between realizing these goals and realizing these dreams is just the journey, starting the practice. So, with that said, I really do appreciate this proverb. It is the voyage, not the ship, that matters. Thank you so much. This is when I'm done speaking.
You're most welcome, Kesiwa. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your contribution. Zizi, thank you for being here. You are another wonderful elder that we have so much love and appreciation for. I hope one day you can actually connect with Gogo Rutendo Ngara. Gogo, just so you know, Zizi she's over 80, and she's an elder originally from Egypt. She currently resides in Canada, and she's truly one of the most amazing gems that we've also had join us here in the Daily African Proverbs. Zizi, share with us your comments briefly, please.
Thank you very much, Simon. And I would love to connect. I don't know, like I guess we can connect on Black and the back channel if she would like. And my interpretation of this proverb is more that it's not where we are going; it's the actual journey that is important. So that means it's not the destination, but the journey towards the destination. Because we don't need to rush to go to any destination because things change. We're only in control of what's now, this minute. So if we have a destination in mind, it's sort of, I don't know if it diminishes the value of the journey or it doesn't include this let go and let God kind of thing. Like, okay, I'm going to visit you in Washington. That's a destination in my mind. But if I'm driving, I would rather enjoy the whole journey, look at the roads, the mountains, the trees, the nature and all that, and enjoy my journey to you rather than I go in a hurry just to get to visit you. So that's how I interpret it. It's really the journey that counts, not the destination or
Wonderful.
what we're going.
Wonderful, Zizi. Thank you again. It's about the journey, not the destination. Thank you so much. Let's hear from Crystal. Crystal, thank you again for your continued support. Share with us your perspectives briefly.
Yes, what I love about these proverbs is it allows for an interpretation through everyone's different lenses, and I definitely see that it is the journey, as Zizi and many others shared. Um, I will say that I even found connections with what the speaker said when talking about feminine representation or feminine energy, the essence of that, and it not being exclusive to those who are assigned female at birth, the differences between female and feminine, and that it is not the vessel, very much a pun to the ship, but it is the voyage, and in essence, the energy. Um, So we get so caught up in the physical and not really realizing how these are just vessels. This vessel will decompose and I will still be energy. I will still be consciousness. There will still be life after that. Um, and these connections with these proverbs with ships, there's a lot of energy attached to that. A lot of us who have ancestors that were affected by the diaspora, we feel that when we talk about ships and voyages, we feel that in the language, in giving sound um, to that journey, to that voyage, because a lot got on that ship and didn't make it to their destination. That was a hard voyage. So that's also what I think of when I came into the room and saw the proverb. Immediately, like I kind of felt something there with the context to what these proverbs mean. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share. As always, this is a great room.
Thank you very much, Crystal. I love everything you had to share. Let's hear from Akinse. Akinse, the mic is yours. Share with us briefly your perspectives.
Good morning. I want to say thank you for allowing me this opportunity to share my thoughts on this wonderful proverb. Brother Simon, thank you for allowing me to sit amongst this community of obviously wise and intelligent men and women I am deeply honored for this opportunity to just share my thoughts on the proverb. It is the voyage, not the ship, that matters. The first thing, first and foremost, what comes to mind to me is the idea or the uh, the value of appreciation. You know, um, I think some of the speakers that came before me already alluded to the idea of the the uh, the ship as being a metaphor of someone's personal being or someone's personal body, right? Um, you know, it's interesting in many African spiritual philosophical uh, practices and philosophies and cultures that what is physical seems to be able to change very easy, meaning that it's impermanent, right? And what is spiritual seems to be, in many cases, very permanent. So, in other words, our journey as human beings, in this vessel can definitely change. Where the ship is no more than a tool to allow us to get to our destination, our destiny. The ship is only a box or whatever you want to envision it to be. It can change, but who we are and what our values are and where we're trying to go and our goals and our destiny and our temperament, our emotions, our feelings, our behavior, that is what continues on. All those things inform our character and who we eventually will arrive at being. But how we get there can definitely change. So uh, I just like to say that the idea of appreciation, um, the idea of opportunity, and the ability to focus on the benefits of the experience is what comes to mind when I think about or listen to people talk about this proverb. So, again, I'll just want to say thank you, and I'll end with that. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome. I can say thank you for making the time to join us today. Let's hear from Jay, who is another amazing contributor to the Daily African Proverbs and also a resident of Seattle, Washington, where I am speaking from at the moment. Jay, share with us your perspectives briefly.
Thank you, dear brother. Thank you so much. And just very briefly, I thought about the birth canal, that we're all born into this world the same way through that birth canal, but some are born with a silver spoon in their mouths, and some are born with intense struggles and challenges and disappointments and addictions. But that as we're going through that life, going through journey and using different ships to get to where we want to go, that we need to be able to toss overboard those disappointments, that suffering, that pain, those addictions, and feel it with, as you're traveling with knowledge and wisdom and stories. It's a voyage that you're going through where you'll be able to eventually share how you got there, how you arrived, and the value of using every single one of those lessons to become a truly precious gem of godliness. Um, that was my interpretation of this proverb. Thank you so much for allowing me to share. Wishing everyone an absolutely blessed day.
Thank you so much, Jay. I'm grateful that you're here. Mashezi, please share with us your perspectives briefly.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you for the space. And yeah, what Gogo shared was really, truly powerful. And I really thank her for this wisdom coming through. And it really sparked something here in my thinking as well, with that feminine energy and us actually aligning and balancing ourselves to the tree of life. So thank you for that, because it really brings that order and I really do appreciate your wisdom, Gogo. Um, Also, with the proverb, what came through for me is life is a journey, and it's not a race. So I just got that, you know, uh, we in a world that is a race, but now we get caught up in that, and that journey is just understanding that it's your story, and you're just free to live it the way that is in the rhythm of nature. So that's what came through, and I do appreciate the space, Simon, and thank you once again, Gogo. Um, yeah, that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you very much, Mashezi, for being here with us today and for your contributions. Hi, Mamzi. You are the last speaker to share your perspectives on stage. Then we'll go to Gogo. The mic is yours.
Hello, Simon, and Happy New Year again to everybody on stage. Um, I just was, listening to Gogo, and thank you so much for so much knowledge. Um, I am learning and I am enjoying listening very much. Thank you. The proverb is just to me it means a lot. Just came back from Africa. I remember when going to one of my missions was last month, and I remember my car breaking down in the jungle. I remember us walking, and then with my team, and then looking for motorcycle. One motorcycle saw us, and he said, "Okay, wait. Since you guys are eight, I got to bring maybe four more motorcycle." But when he came, he had three, so we've managed to get eight of us in three motorcycle. Imagine with the drivers. And then it didn't take more than an hour. Two other motorcycles broke down. So we finished the trip being like five on a motorcycle. But when we got to destination, oh, we danced and we did what we wanted to do. So to me, it was like when I read the voyage, it's not the ship that matters. It's so true because at the end of the day, what I have as a memory, as the most epic and lovely memory, is our journey and our arriving in that village in the back of the forest. So, thank you. I'm enjoying listening. Thank you so much, Simon, for having me here. I'm done. My name is Mamzi.
Thank you very much, Mamzi, for all the work that you do to uplift those who are underprivileged. And thank you to everybody that contributed today. Over 62 people have been here with us during the entire conversation. And now Gogo Rutendo Ngara is going to just, share a few closing remarks and then do with for us or with us grounding, which is much similar to meditation, but it's an African spiritual practice. So Gogo, now I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you so much, Simon, and thank you so much to all the sisters and brothers who shared such incredible interpretations of this, proverb, and just brought so much richness, to its meaning. And I think if I were just to sum up, everything that everybody has brought together, is that ultimately, yes, the proverb is about the journey towards ourselves, the voyage towards our inner state. And when we travel that journey towards our inner state, it doesn't matter, if we are tossed over the ship, during, the transatlantic, slave trade. It doesn't matter whether we never make it, it doesn't matter whether we end up on the other side. It doesn't matter whether we never have left, because ultimately we realize in African spirituality that in order to be found, what is very important is that we actually need to be lost. And so that's an important principle in African spirituality. And so ultimately, this journey that we are going on is a journey within. And when we are in that journey within, how we meet the ravages of life around us is different to how we meet it when we have no connection with the voyage that has gone within. So with that, I'll just invite everybody to, if you'd like, just find some form of comfort where you are. And if you're sitting in a chair like me, try and ensure that your feet are rooted on the ground, that you can really feel the ground on your feet. Or if you're sitting, ensure that you can feel the pressure of whatever it is that you're sitting on, if it's the floor, if it's a bed, so that you feel that relationship between yourself and other, and how you impact other, because the way you impact the other is how it's being impacted on by you. And then I invite you to actually place your tongue on the roof of your mouth. So just where your teeth meets the gum line, so that you're actually closing what we call the microcosmic orbit, so that you're creating a journey within yourself of nature and of energy. And then I invite you just to take a deep breath in and exhale. And take a deep breath in and exhale. And take another deep breath in and exhale. And for those who feel comfortable in closing your eyes, you may wish to close your eyes as you're keeping on breathing in, 2, 3, 4, and out, 2, 3, 4. And inhale, 2, 3, 4, and exhale, 2, 3, 4. And as we're breathing, we're calling in Umoya. Umoya is the breath, but Moya is not just the breath, it's also the spirit. So we're breathing in, 2, 3, 4, and out, 2, 3, 4. Breathing in, 2, 3, 4, and out, 2, 3, 4. And as we're breathing this Umoya, we're breathing in its source, which is the source of life itself. So we're breathing in, 2, 3, 4, and out, 2, 3, 4. And we're breathing in, 2, 3, 4, and out, 2, 3, 4. And I invite us just to take that source, that breath, which is the spirit, which is life itself, into the deepest parts of ourselves, wherever it is that one feels it. It may be in your heart, it may be in your gut, it may be deep in your womb, it may be in the pit of your stomach. Whatever it is, or wherever it is that feels like the deepest part of yourself, I invite you to take that source into that space. And exhale. And breathing in and exhale. And then I invite us to take that source from where it is in the depths of where we are, and allow that source to start expanding through our whole beings, expanding downwards towards the feet, expanding upwards towards the chest, towards the neck, to the top of the head, expanding into the arms, the shoulders, the back, to the tips of the fingers. And when the source, this umoya, this breath, the spirit that we have taken in, has engulfed our whole being, we are aware that we are the captains, but more than that, we are the creators of the ship, of the tool to our destiny, of the birth canal, of the impermanence of the physical, but the permanence of the spiritual. We are the vessels and we're the creators of the appreciation. We're the vessels and we're the appreciation of the journey, not the race. We're vessels of the remembering that takes place. We are the ones who are full of possible journeys, and that whatever it is that has left us lost is actually our finding. So we're aware with umoya that we may toss overboard over all our disappointments. We may toss overboard the ship that we have created, all that doesn't serve, and we create an empty vessel, the source, the impermanence or the permanence of the void, or the yin or the feminine that is capable of seeding that which we wish to create for the season that we are in right now and the season that is to become the year that moves ahead. And I invite us once more to take a deep breath in and exhale, and breathing in and exhale, and one more breath in and exhale. And then what I would encourage in one's own time is, if one draws or writes, or however we are able to express our creativity, to draw, write what this ship looks like that we have created, because it is that tool, as we've heard from one of our brothers, that allows us to get to our destiny. Ashe.
Ashe. Wow. Thank you. Thank you very much. One thing I just want to mention before we wrap up is that when you said umoya, it reminded me of muya. In my mother tongue, when you say muya, it also means, the air that gives you life. So I'm always amazed by how African cultures and languages are very much connected. Now, to you, Gogo Rutendo Ngara, thank you so much. And to all our audience members who have been on YouTube and also Clubhouse, thank you. Please remember that this conversation is going to be available in the African Father in America podcast in the next 1 or 2 hours. And see you tomorrow. I will be hosting Mohit Arora, who is a health equity organizer. He's based in Canada. He's one of the biggest influencers here on Clubhouse. He's going to be here with us for the Daily African Proverbs tomorrow at 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Join us and really take good care of yourselves. Peace and love. Thank you, Gogo Rutendo Ngara.
Ashe.
Ashe.
African Father in America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. African Father in America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze.
You are listening to African Father in America podcast by Simon Javan Okello, live from Seattle, Washington.